Chapter 61. The Power of Numbers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If you are interested in reading 10 chapters ahead, go check out my Patreon with the link https://www.patreon.com/lazysagedao, or just type in my writer's name in the website. The plot is getting exciting there, and you guys can support me in any way you can. Additionally, go read my other novel, Journey of the Fate-Destroying Emperor, and join the Discord. https://discord.gg/princesstapy ___________________________________________________________________________________________________________________ After making contact with Credence, Edward returned to his hotel room, then took out a crystal ball. After activating it, he began to watch what was going on through it. He basically watched the entire plot of Fantastic Beast inside his luxurious and very expensive hotel room. This crystal ball is actually a form of divination magic. As a matter of fact, one of Edward's greatest failures ever since coming to the wizarding world is divination. When he was young, he tried using divination, but it was to no avail. So, he spent a lot of time researching this type of magic, but he seemed to be incapable of using it. So, Edward thought that he did not have a talent for this kind of magic. However, things seemed more complex than he imagined. During his first year at Hogwarts, he studied Professor Trelawney's bloodline and found the source of her ability. Despite how diluted her bloodline power was. Then, he tried to add that power to his life code modification, but even then, he could not use divination magic. As a last attempt, Edward tried bloodline magic. Bloodline magic is a new form of magic that he created while studying the life code. It is actually a very simple form of magic. It allows Edward the ability to use the magic of magical creatures. Without modifying his life code. There are many magical creatures with amazing bloodlines, but Edward cannot just use all of them. He knew that his bloodline modification had limits, not to mention the many other powerful bloodlines that exist in the multiverse or omniverse. So, he only used the best of the Harry Potter world, while leaving enough room for himself for future modifications. Nevertheless, he still wanted a way to use the ability of some of these magical animals. So, he invented a way for him to use their ability. Bloodline magic. Unfortunately, the downside of this form of magic is that it requires material to cast. To be precise, Edward needs to use specially made gems that contain the bloodline of the animals he wants to use. Back to the problem of divination, even after using bloodline magic, he still could not use divination. After discovering the correcting force of fate that made the story of Harry Potter go back to its original trajectory, he knew that peeking in the secret of fate was not a simple thing, and that there might be a reason that he could not use divination magic beside the simple answer that he did not have the talent. The only reason that he could use any divination spell at all was because of his exchange with Nicholas Flamel. And that was only the most basic of spells, like peeping at people from a distance. So, Edward spent the past few days spying on the main characters of this story. First, he watched how Newt was arrested by MACUSA, how he and his group escape, and how the groups managed to track down and capture Newt's alchemy in a Macy's. While looking at the entire situation, Edward sighed as he watched the interactions between Queenie and Jacob. BDNV, so, everything went back to the original track after I left, he muttered to himself. As a matter of fact, he was briefly interested in Queenie after seeing her, but he did not pursue it any further as his fear of attachment got the best of him. He realized that Queenie was probably the kind of girl that he liked the most. Free-spirited and kind-hearted. Unlike most other women that he has relationships with, he could foresee himself truly falling in love with her. However, given his grand aspirations to travel across multiple dimensions and universe, love is not really part of his plan. Of course, for a brief moment, he pondered whether to take her with him on his journey, but he decided against the idea. Forget the fact that he is from the year 1992. Meaning that she would have to abandon everything, including her sister, to leave with him. On top of that, Edward does not believe that he has the capacity of having only one woman his entire life. He is essentially immortal and has a long life ahead of him, so he will meet and experience all kinds of beautiful women and wonder. So, it is virtually impossible for him to settle on only one woman. And to Edward, Queenie deserved a person that can heartily devote themselves to her. And Jacob is that person. So, after their little flirting banter during dinner in their first meeting, he never approached her and her sister again. As a matter of fact, Edward only left his hotel when Credence realized that he was right and that Percival Graves was using him all along. Then, he turned into his obscurest form and started wreaking havoc in New York. Scene break. Edward was floating in the sky of New York, invisible to both muggles and wizards alike. With a calm look on his face, he watched how terrifying Credence's power as an Obscurial was. His first thought is how would he deal with such power if he was ever forced to fight with it. Then, he started to create many counter-measures on how to either contain, escape, and kill Credence if they ever were enemies. Then, he started to think whether he could create a spell that allows him to instantly create an Obscurus, then control it to his bidding. If he succeeded, then his spell would be even more powerful than Grindelwald's, Protego Diabolica. So, with a calm mind, he watched until the moment that the American wizards thought that they had actually killed Credence. After that, he watched how all the wizards banded together to fix the entire city of New York that was previously destroyed. It was an amazing sight to see. It looked like time was going backwards. After seeing this, Edward was moved as he muttered to himself. Maybe I underestimate the power of wizards of this world. With the proper guidance, they can do many wonderful things. Not to mention that they are a large group of supernatural people that can do a lot of destruction even without any proper training. So, if they were properly trained like an army, then they can actually achieve many things. After thinking about this, many of Edward's preconceived notions about wizards were changed, and an idea was slowly brewing inside his mind. An idea that could forever change the wizarding world. Afterwards, he apparat somewhere, to be precise, he apparat to Credence's location. I warned you, didn't I? Said Edward after appearing in a desolate and abandoned factory. Who? Screamed Credence, then he saw Edward's handsome face slowly approaching him. He frowned as he did not like this strange wizard that seemed to appear everywhere around him. His demeanor reminded him of Percival Graves, a person Credence once thought to be his friend. There is no need to be so hostile. I am probably the only person in your life that has ever told you the truth so directly. Ever since our first meeting, I have made my intentions very clear. Without any deception, replied Edward calmly. Credence frowned as he realized that Edward was right. So, after a few seconds of silence, he asked. What exactly is that contract of yours? Sorry that I did not post yesterday, but something happened to me. I started posted on royalroad.com. So, while reading the comments there, the people there tear apart my novel. I mean, I did not expect so many errors were in it. Now, previously, I thought that I was the kind of person that can take constructive criticism, but after this experience, I realize how massive my ego was. So, after the experience, I was not in the mood to write at all, and even pondered for a brief moment whether to quit altogether. Nevertheless, these comments have helped realize how much I need to improve as a writer, and I am very grateful for the criticism. Now that I have placed my ego aside, hopefully I will become a much better writer after this experience. Pickup line. You may be a muggle, but that body is magical. Title. Contract. Chapter 62. Contract. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If you are interested in reading 10 chapters ahead, go check out my Patreon with the link https://www.patreon.com/lazysagedao, or just type in my writer's name in the website. The plot is getting exciting there and you guys can support me in any way you can. Additionally, go read my other novel, Journey of the Fate-Destroying Emperor, and join the Discord. https://discord.gg/pnsestapy underscore 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 underscore. The contract consists of two parts. The first of which is to allow me to study you as an obscurus, replied Edward calmly. Study. Obscurus. What is that? Asked Credence with an obvious displeasure in his face. After all, no one would like to be treated as a guinea pig or lab rat. I forgot that you do not even know what you are and what your powers are, replied Edward. Then, he suddenly entered his professor mode and started to explain. When a young wizard or witch repressed his own magical capability or is forced to do so through physical or emotional trauma, an uncontrollable dark force that is parasitic in nature will be formed inside of them known as an obscurus, and said child will be known as an obscurial. As you can see from your power, obscurus is a very destructive dark force. In the past, when wizards were haunted by muggles, obscurials were a more common thing, but when wizards separated from muggle society, they became a rare thing. Most obscurial do not live past the age 10, but you are different. I am guessing that because of your lineage, you are way more powerful than most of them, thus finding a way to not only survive, but freely control such a power. I am very interested in how you did such a thing. Lineage. You mean my family? Do you know who my real family is? Asked Credence with an agitated voice. I do know, but I will not tell you, replied Edward calmly. Why? Screamed Credence. Then, a powerful force came from his body and rushed towards Edward. However, the latter did not even move as a power shield cham appeared around him, then bounced the powerful force back sending Credence flying away a few meters until he hit a wall. Edward then walked to him who was lying on the floor before saying, "Are you calm now?" With a pleading look on his face, Credence asked, "Why don't you tell me if you know?" "As long as you tell me, I will sign your contract." Edward had a pensive look on his face. The reason he rejected Credence was because of his usual instinct to keep the canon timeline change as little as possible. So, for a moment, he forgot that he did not need to care about keeping the original story as much as possible. After figuring this out, Edward started to think about the benefit that he could get from this situation. One of his plans was to study the power of fate and discover the reason that divination magic seemed to elude him so much. He also wanted to study the correcting force of fate that ensures that the plots of the original canon storyline always get back on track. Since there is a physical manifestation of death in this world, could the same be for fate? Thought Edward to himself. Then, he looked at Credence before saying, "Fine, I can agree to your terms, but you have to sign the contract first, and you have to cooperate with my research. Before you agree so easily, be warned that you might be forced to live many unhappy memories of your childhood." Despite this warning, Credence did not hesitate to sign the contract that Edward handed to him. He did not even ask the second part of the contract that this stranger he met only twice mentioned before. He longed to know his origin, his family, so he did not care what he did to find them, to know them. After seeing him sign the magical contract, Edward nodded in satisfaction. "We can start in 7 days as I have some things to deal with first." "Can you tell me who my parents are now?" asked Credence as he held Edward's arm with a very firm grip. Edward then looked at this lost child in his eyes, and after seeing the longing mixed with despair in his face, he secretly sighed before answering. "Your real name is Aurelius Dumbledore, the younger brother of Albus Dumbledore. Who is currently one of the greatest wizards alive, and soon will be known as the greatest white wizard of this century. I will tell you the details later. I know that it has not been proven with certainty whether Credence is really Dumbledore's brother, but for the sake of this fiction, he is. So, if you are someone that is particular about continuity, then consider this an alternate universe where he is in fact his real blood brother. After that, Edward operated away, heading to a few other locations in the next few days. In his last stop, he appeared in a run-down in Scene Break. After entering the inn, the smell of goat assaulted his nose, making him quite uncomfortable. Nevertheless, he ignored the dirt and smell of the inn and headed straight for the owner in the upstairs sitting that who was admiring a painting of a young child hanging to a place where anyone could see it. Although this person was in his 40s or 50s, he looked much older due to his unkempt hair and clothes. "Do you want to see her?" asked Edward out loud. An act which startled the distracted Aberforth. After hearing someone speaking next to him, he instantly stood up, took out his wand and pointed it at the stranger that had his face covered. "Who are you?" he asked as he felt a great deal of threat from this strange wizard. His instinct was warning that this person was very dangerous, and the only time he felt such tremendous power was from his brother and that damned Grindelwald. "Me. It doesn't matter who I am, but you have not answered my question," replied Edward calmly. "Why would I talk about my affairs to a stranger that broke through my own inn?" "That sounds fair. In that case, I will be more direct. I need you to sign a magical contract for me, and in exchange, I will let you see your sister again for a few hours. You can talk to her and say all the things you wished you had before she left." Aberforth became even more on guard after hearing this, so he did not lower his wand. He squinted his eyes at Edward before saying, "You must think for a fool that I would believe such nonsense." Nevertheless, Edward was not offended. With a calm and slow motion, he took out a small stone or gem from his pocket. "I am sure that your brother was not the only one who ever researched such a thing, am I right?" That's the resurrection stone, one of the Deathly Hallows," stuttered Aberforth. Who wished nothing more than to rush to Edward and confiscate it from his hand. Fortunately, his reason still got the best of him. The truth of the matter is that this stone was not the one that Edward has in the future, but the one from this timeline. He used the Imperieuse curse to control the Gaunt's family to take the stone, and he will return it later and modify their memories. At one point he wanted to know what would happen if he brought this one to the future, but considering the fact that he might have to deal with death if he did that, he stopped his plan. For now. Yes. With this, you can see her again and talk to her. I can do more than that. I can finally resurrect her, added Aberforth. Unfortunately, that is not possible. At least the resurrection stone is not enough to do such a thing. Aberforth finally woke up from his delusion after hearing this, then he sighed melancholy. Nevertheless, after a few minutes of silence, he asked, "What's this contract about?" Underscore 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 pickup line. If you were a Dementor, I'd become a criminal just to get your kiss. Title: Cruel Intentions. Chapter 63. Cruel Intentions. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If you are interested in reading 10 chapters ahead, go check out my Patreon with the link https://www.patreon.com/lazysagedao, or just type in my writer's name in the website. The plot is getting exciting there and you guys can support me in any way you can. Additionally, go read my other novel, Journey of the Fate-Destroying Emperor, and join the Discord. https://discord.gg/princesstapy. Edward smiled under his hood before saying, "This contract is not about you, but your brother Albus." "Of course it is," replied Aberforth. "Most dangerous things that occur in the wizarding world involve him one way or another. Nevertheless, please be more specific." "Well, I lust after your brother's knowledge of magic. However, knowing him, he would rather die than willingly hand it over to me. So, I have to become creative in finding ways to acquire what I want. What don't you just say that you are not his opponent, so you are trying to use me to get to him?" "Unfortunately, you are wrong, Mr. Aberforth. If there was a list of the most powerful wizards in this world, I would be first, your brother second, and Grindelwald third or fourth," replied Edward while thinking about Credence's power. This Obscurial might be ranked third given his ability and potential. Aberforth frowned after hearing this, as he could not tell where this person's confidence came from. Despite being estranged for many years, Aberforth knew how powerful his brother was. He knew, despite his calm and nice persona, was a very terrifying wizard. And if it was not that because of the blood pact, his brother would have long stopped Grindelwald. After a brief moment of silence, he asked, "How is me signing this contract going to help you get to my brother? I could spend a lot of time explaining to you the power of bloodline, but I do not have a lot of time to spend, so, do we have a deal or not?" replied Edward calmly. If it was not that his magical contract had the restriction that the user had to sign it on his own volition, Edward had many ways for him to force Aberforth to sign the contract. Whether it was to use the Imperius Curse, influence his mind, or even straight up enslave his soul, he could do all that. Edward's morally grey character often shows up when it comes to magic and knowledge. Unfortunately, this contract had severe restrictions when it came to this. He had tried before, but the contract did not work. After hesitating for a while, Aberforth asked for the contract and Edward handed it to him. The first thing that the oldest of Dumbledore noticed was how beautiful this magical contract was. There were so many strange patterns on it which were glowing with magical lights. Then, he spent some time reading. The general gist of it was that his younger brother was to hand over all his magical knowledge, and in exchange, Edward will allow Aberforth to see his sister, Ariana, for a few hours in the next 3 days. Of course, there were clauses like to keep this contract a secret between the two of them, and other things. After making sure that there was nothing wrong with the contract, Aberforth had to make sure, as he was once played by the goblins of Gringotts due to a contract, that he did not immediately sign it, but asked, "Why is the time duration so short?" "You should have read the tale of the three brothers," asked Edward back instead of answering. Aberforth nodded. "Then, do you remember what happened to the second brother's wife after her soul was summoned from the afterlife? She was sad and cold, separated from him by a veil. Though she had returned to the mortal world, she did not truly belong there and suffered," muttered Aberforth. "That is correct. By using soul magic, I can summon your sister without having any problem. However, she cannot stay in the world of the living for long. At least without the proper anchor," thought Edward to himself. Aberforth then sighed before signing the contract. An act which greatly relieved Edward. Little did Aberforth know that this contract was also signed by another person, his unknown little brother, Credence Barebone or Aurelius Dumbledore. The purpose of Edward doing all of this was truly to get Dumbledore's magical knowledge. However, this plan was not that simple. Edward knew that the headmaster would never willingly sign this contract. Edward's first plan was to go back in time when Dumbledore was young and easily influenced, then use the temptation of the Deathly Hallows to have him sign the contract. However, even with the Philosopher's Stone powering his gate, he could not go back so far in time. So, after realizing that he was in 1926, he created another plan. By using the power of bloodline, he will have the headmaster's relatives sign a contract bound to the Dumbledore family's bloodline. Then, Edward will have him pay it. And if the headmaster refused, although Edward could not force him to hand in his knowledge since it was not him personally that signed the contract, there are still major consequences. For one, his brother Aberforth will be backlashed by the contract and die. As for Credence, given that Edward had never heard anything about him in his time period, he imagined that he was either dead or hiding somewhere very hidden in the world. Of course, Edward knows that Dumbledore is the kind of person that watched his brother die. In order to prevent Edward from becoming too powerful by gaining his knowledge, the headmaster might really sacrifice not only his life, but his remaining family. However, Edward was prepared for such an occasion. According to the hidden clauses of the contract, if such an occasion was to occur, Edward has the legal right to all the souls of the Dumbledore family, including their dead parents, sister, and even Dumbledore's soul. Of course, Edward knows that a powerful wizard like the headmaster has control of his soul after death. This was the reason that he could show up to greet Harry Potter after Voldemort killed him in the Forbidden Forest. So, Edward's plan for this situation is to summon the headmaster's little sister, Ariana, and torture her soul right in front of him. If the headmaster can harden himself to watch his family kill by not fulfilling the contract, Edward will not hesitate to become cruel and despicable. As a matter of fact, his plan was not just to call the headmaster's sister, but his mother and father too. He will torture them until he gets what he wants. Back to the current moment. After Aberforth signed the contract, Edward fulfilled his end of the bargain and called Ariana Dumbledore's soul from the afterlife, and let her reunite with her brother. Meanwhile, Edward was pulled into a dreamscape despite appearing to be just standing not far from these two. The person who called was of course Death. "You know, wizard, you should not mess with time," said Death in a plain voice. "Many people have done it before. I doubt that you personally gave them a visit, so why are you targeting me?" asked Edward calmly. "None of these people had the wit or strength to be able to cause as much damage as you can. Messing with time can do irreparable damage to this frail universe." Edward frowned after hearing this, then he said, "I can agree not to cause trouble, or at the very least, just be an observer, but you have to answer my question." After a brief silence, Death said, "What is it? Since you are the manifestation of the laws of death, are there any other gods like you?" "Like the physical manifestation of life and fate," responded Edward. Death became silent for a few minutes after hearing this question, then he answered. "There used to be. However, after the cataclysm, all the others were forced to revert back to the laws of nature in order to keep the balance and function of this universe, and I am the only one left." "What is this cataclysm you mention?" asked Edward, who felt that he had come very close to the deepest secrets of this world. "I have answered your question, wizard," replied Death. "Now, keep your word or suffer the consequences." After that, Edward was kicked out of the dreamscape and woke up to find himself still in the Hog's Head Inn, and only a few seconds had passed. To all my Patter.o.n.s members, sorry I have not posted for a while. So, I owe you guys 2 chapters that will post it tonight. Maybe I should be posting this message on the website instead, since I doubt you guys read this. Pickup line. You must play Quidditch. I know a keeper when I see one. Title. Blackmail. Chapter 64. Blackmail. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If you are interested in reading 10 chapters ahead, go check out my Patreon with the link https://www.patreon.com/lazysagedao, or just type in my writer's name in the website. The plot is getting exciting there, and you guys can support me in any way you can. Additionally, go read my other novel, Journey of the Fate-Destroying Emperor, and join the Discord. https://discord.gg/princesstapy. ______________________________________________________________________________________________________________________ After his little chat with Death, Edward spent the next hours waiting until Aberforth finished talking to his sister, then he sent her soul back to the afterlife. Edward did not stop despite the pitiful look Aberforth was given him. The next day, Edward directly teleported to some place using the House.Elf magic spell. The reason being that this place was one of the most secure places in this country, the MACUSA jail. The highly guarded prisoner, Grindelwald, was shocked to see someone actually operate inside his jail cell, knowing how many anti-apparition enchantments were there. He knew that only the Phoenix and House.Elf might have this ability, but not a wizard. So, immediately, Grindelwald was on guard. Soon, he noticed that he was the only one who could see this unannounced visitor. With a calm face, he said, "So, who might I owe this visit to, gentlemen?" Edward did not immediately answer, instead he activated his magic core. Demonstrating his massive magic power. Grindelwald felt the vast magic power from Edward's heart, then he muttered in shock. "You broke the first limiter." Edward smiled and finally spoke for the first time. "It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance, Mr. Gellert Grindelwald. My name is Edward Bones. Grindelwald frowned as he remembered that there was a pure-blood family named Bones back in Britain. I have never seen such a talented wizard like you, Mr. Bones. So, what brings you to see me here? I am here because I require something of you. After saying that, Edward did not waste time and handed a magic contract to Grindelwald, who took his time to read it. The contract basically granted Edward access to all his magical knowledge and experiences. So, Mr. Bones, what makes you think that I would sign something like this? Asked one of the greatest dark wizards that has ever lived, with a dangerous look in his face. With the same calm look on his face, Edward said. I could threaten you with your own death, but I am an advocate against capital punishment. So, let me show you the reason. After saying that, Edward took out his wand and started to enchant Grindelwald's prison. In half an hour, he placed so many enchantments in this room that would make anyone dizzy just by looking at them. More importantly were the effects of these enchantments. They first prevented Grindelwald from using wandless magic by locking his magic power, then they prevented his voice from reaching outside to prevent him from charming the people outside. The enchantments prevented anyone from using Polyjuice Potion to impersonate him. As a matter of fact, the enchantments will prevent anyone from entering this room except for sending Grindelwald's food. And if the leader of the Alliance tries to escape, these enchantments will lock his soul inside this room, meaning only his body could leave this room. In essence, these enchantments prevent Grindelwald from escaping using any means imaginable. Just by the enchantments he could recognize, Grindelwald knew the meaning of Edward's. After a brief pause, he said. I do not understand how a talented and powerful wizard like you has never been heard before. Before I sign this contract, I would like to invite you to my cause. With our powers combined, we could finally lead wizardkind to be free from oppression, free to be what we truly are instead of hiding like rats in a sewer. What do you say? You know, Mr. Grindelwald, I agree with many of your ideas. Unfortunately, I do not agree with your approach of accomplishing them. Despite the fact that you said that you do not hate Muggles, your actions are still rooted in the supremacy of wizards. You failed to see the true value of Muggles and what they can bring to society and wizard civilization as a whole. Not to mention that I can see that you have already started to let powers get to your head, and have started in a path astray from the ideologies that you preach. What do you mean by the true value of Muggles? Asked Grindelwald. If it was any other person who said these words to him, he would have ignored them and tried to convince them that Muggles will only bring destruction to the world, just like his vision showed him. However, coming from a powerful wizard like Edward, he is willing to listen. As for being convinced, that was something entirely different. Meanwhile, Edward wanted to tell Grindelwald about the wonders of technology and how if it was mixed with magic, how wonderful civilization would advance, but he did not do so as he gave Death his words that he would not interfere too much. So, he just shook his head before saying. There is no need to say anything more. You can either sign this contract, or spend the rest of your life in this life while your revolution crumbles without your leadership. I am sure that Dumbledore will not have any reservation placing these people into their places without your presence. Grindelwald frowned after hearing this. Could he know the relationship between me and Albus? He then looked down at the contract in his hand, then signed it. Unlike the headmaster, he did not have the will to sacrifice his own life for the greater good. Maybe in his later years, after spending years in a prison, he might have changed. For now, however, he was not that kind of person. After receiving the signed contract, Edward smiled gleefully, then he operated away after removing the enchantments in the cell room. He then spent the next 3 days fulfilling his end of the bargain with Aberforth, then he met with Credence to fulfill his other agreement by teaching him basic magic. Although Edward gave Death his word not to interfere, he had already signed a contract before that, so he was also bound by his own contract. Of course he could still find ways to break it, but he did not want to. Based on Death's words, there are a few things that he still wanted to observe. Meanwhile, while teaching Credence, he started to review all of Grindelwald's magic knowledge. Just like him and Voldemort, Grindelwald was a master of the dark arts and started experimenting with dark magic ever since he was in school. So, there were plenty of things to learn. For once, he learned that Grindelwald used the Elder Wand to break his first limiter. Through the power of law imbued in the wand, he was able to break his own limit. Through this knowledge, he learned a little bit of the capabilities of laws. Of course, Edward was most happy to finally learn the dark magic. Protego Diabolica. He previously theorized that this spell was related to the Fiendfire curse, and he was correct. Grindelwald took that curse and modified it to greater height. Not only did he increase its destructive power, but also granted it the ability to determine whether a person was loyal to them. Edward was very satisfied with this ability, as this would be of great help to the plans he recently made after seeing the power of wizards when they worked together when they repaired New York. Another thing that he acquired that made him satisfied and that would be helpful to his future plans was Grindelwald's ability to charm people with his words. Through his memories, Edward learned mannerism, linguistics, persuasive speaking and emotion manipulation, all the things that Grindelwald used to charm wizards to follow him in his revolution. Title: Wild Theories. Chapter 65. Wild Theories. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If you are interested in reading 10 chapters ahead, go check out my Patreon with the link https://www.patreon.com/lazysagedao, or just type in my writer's name in the website. The plot is getting exciting there and you guys can support me in any way you can. Additionally, go read my other novel, Journey of the Fate-Destroying Emperor, and join the Discord. https://discord.gg/princesstiapy _______________________ After reviewing all of Grindelwald's knowledge, the contract did not cease to exist. No, Edward would not make such a rookie mistake, so the contract will not be invalid until he squeezes the first-generation Dark Lord to his last value. He knew that Grindelwald still had plenty of room to grow. Even when he was imprisoned, he did not believe for a second that Grindelwald did not think about magic during his time in prison at Nurmengard. More importantly, Edward wanted the memory of his battle with Dumbledore in 1945. This battle was described as legendary by the people who witnessed it, so Edward wanted to see it and experienced it. So, he planned to activate the contract again after returning to the present. After he was done, Edward finally took time to reflect on his brief conversation he had with Death, and all the information he received in just a few sentences. First, if he messes up with time, he will have to suffer heavy consequences. Most likely, Death will be able to break the rules of his non-intervention and deal with him. Second, there used to be many gods like Death in this world, but after suffering from something called the cataclysm, they were either dead or forced to revert to the basic principles that govern realities of this universe. According to Edward's current theory, he believes that this cataclysmic event occurred about 12,000 years ago. The reason for that was that Edward had long noticed that this Harry Potter universe is very similar to his previous universe before he transmigrated. The only difference was magic, but the culture, history, and advance in technology was the same with different people. However, key figures like Einstein, Isaac Newton, Nikola Tesla, Hitler, and Stalin still exist, people that have impacted the world greatly. This fact has Edward theorized that the Harry Potter world was possibly just an alternate universe of Earth, but he does not have any proof to back that up. Back to the point. One of the theories he once read in his past life was the idea that 12,000 years ago, a highly advanced civilization existed on Earth, but was destroyed due to a cataclysmic event. However, remains of this civilization were discovered by the Mesopotamian, Babylonian, and Egyptians. Then, they build a powerful civilization and wonders that some scientist in modern times still could not completely understand or explain. Edward's theory was that similar events might have occurred in this Harry Potter world, that a powerful wizarding civilization existed 12,000 years ago and the gods like death even walked the earth among them. After going through the cataclysm, this civilization was destroyed and the gods were killed. Remains of it were discovered by later wizards, hence the wizards in the past were most likely way more powerful than currently. Edward believes that magic power used to exist in the environment in the past. But as time passed, the magic power gradually decreased, hence the reason that modern wizards are so weak. This theory also explains why ley line nodes contain magic power, but the environment does not. This theory can also explain Edward's other theory that the Harry Potter universe was a high magical universe, but slowly weakened over time. Another proof of this far-fetched theory was the pyramids located all around the world. After connecting them together in a certain way, they formed a strange pattern that looked like a magical array to Edward. After discovering this, he visited all of them during his 5 years voyage around the world. He discovered that they were located in the most powerful ley line magical nodes in this planet. On top of that, there are signs of very powerful enchantments in these pyramids. Unfortunately, these enchantments were mostly destroyed due to the passage of time, so Edward could not reconstruct them with the little remaining nor guessed the reason for the pyramid's construction. However, now that he has the Gate of World, once he increases its ability to travel back in time, he will visit all these pyramids again and recreate these enchantments and discover the secrets of the past. Anyways, he only promised death not to intervene in the events that occurred in the past. He did not promise not to travel back in time as an observer and recorder of history. Another plan Edward made after summarizing this incident was to return the Harry Potter universe to its former glory. And the first step in doing this will be to reactivate these ley line nodes and ensure that magic power is returned to the environment. However, he had a feeling that things would not be as simple as he imagined. Nevertheless, he had plenty of time to realize his plan. Scene break. After absorbing the essence of Grindelwald's knowledge, Edward placed his attention on Credence, to be precise, on the Obscurus inside of him and his ability to control it. According to their previous agreement, Edward had to teach him basic magical knowledge, and in exchange, Credence had to allow Edward to study him. So, during the next 6 months, Edward did countless tests and experiments on Credence. He even reviewed all his memories of when he first became an Obscurial. An experience which was very unpleasant to the latter. According to Edward's discovery, an Obscurus is formed when a young wizard consciously or subconsciously suppressed his or her magic power inside the magic core. Then, all the negative emotions of trauma or abuse fused with the magic power, creating a dark and powerful parasitic force with tremendous power. In terms of Eastern ideologies, the Obscurus is the negative side or yin of the magic power inside a wizard. According to his research, the reason that adults cannot become obscurial is because no matter how dark their thoughts are, they still have some level of control over it, but children do not. Additionally, after the age of 10, the magic power of most wizards or witches turns into a very stable and hard to control state, hence the reason it becomes more difficult for children after this age to accidentally use different magical abilities based on their emotions. This probability keeps decreasing as they grow older. Most Obscurial do not leave past the age of 10 years old, but Credence was different. The reason for that was his powerful bloodline. Edward has to admit that the Dumbledore family is full of talented individuals. After analyzing his result, Credence's bloodline granted him vastly superior magical powers than ordinary children, thus his Obscurus was way more powerful than ordinary one. Secondly, his bloodline granted him a very powerful soul, which then granted him a very powerful mind or spirit. What Credence did was to separate his mind into two. One was his original self, while the other is all the dark, negative or unhappy memory or trauma that he suffered at the hands of his adopted mother. This second personality is also the source and origin of the Obscurus. Using his main personality or mind, he was able to control the second personality, the Obscurus. As a result of this situation, he was able to freely control this dark parasitic force inside of him. Of course, Credence did not have total control as he was easily influenced by the second personality. Once his emotions got the best of him, the second personality would take control, hence the reason that he easily lost control after discovering Percival Graves' betrayal and went on a rampage around the city of New York. After analyzing Credence, Edward had an idea on how to create the Obscurus spell, but he still needed some much-needed data which he will try to acquire after returning to 1992. A few announcement, I will be posting regularly from now. So, we are back to one chapter a day. Sorry about the irregular posting schedule, I was burnt out and needed a little break, adding to the things happening in my real life, it was just too much. Secondly, I will be writing another fanfiction, this time about Naruto. The MC of this FIC will be truly evil like Fan Yuan from Reverent Insanity. The first chapter will be dropped tomorrow, probably, however, the weekly release for that FIC will be irregular due to the fact that I'm already writing 2 other novels. Finally, starting next month, my patter.o.n will be charged in front. So, to the people who make a pledge, then read all the ahead chapters, then cancelled your pledges before you are charged, you can no longer use that tactic. And shame on all of you who did that. Pickup line. Are you a snitch? Because you're the finest catch here. Title. Operation Jormungandr. Chapter 66. Operation Jormungandr. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If you are interested in reading 10 chapters ahead, go check out my Patreon with the link https://www.patreon.com/lazysagedao, or just type in my writer's name in the website. The plot is getting exciting there and you guys can support me in any way you can. Additionally, go read my other novel, Journey of the Fate-Destroying Emperor, and join the Discord. https://discord.gg/princesstiapy. _________________________________________________________________________________________________________________________h After teaching Credence magic for the past 6 months, Edward did not immediately return to the future, but observe how the changes he made would affect the world, and to also discover how the power of fate works. So, without any surprise, things went to their original track without Edward's interference. Grindelwald still escaped his prison in Makusa, Credence still met and developed a relationship with Nagini, Queenie still became of the Acolytes. More importantly, Credence was still convinced by Grindelwald to join his cause in an attempt to use him to kill Dumbledore. Despite the fact that he was already aware of his heritage, Grindelwald still convinced the NA.VE boy that Albus Dumbledore not only stole his family from him, but all the glory that should belong to him. As for Edward, he watched all these things from the comfort of his hotel through a glass ball using divination. Although he wanted to see the confrontation of Grindelwald and Credence against Dumbledore, he did not want to wait so long. He knew that this would be an interesting battle as Credence also broke his first limiter through the power of the Obscurus. As a matter of fact, he might be the youngest person to ever do so. According to his research, Credence's constant repression of his magical power allowed it to grow rapidly under the influence of the Obscurus. Then, when he reached the limit of 25, the Obscurus broke through that barrier or limiter for him. Oddly enough, it did not break the second limiter. After experimenting on Credence, he also discovered the mysterious power that prevented him from breaking the second limiter. Under his guidance, he had Credence use his Obscurus to try to break that second limiter, but it was no use, no matter how much power it used, it was to no avail. After that, Edward reviewed some memories he got from Nicholas Flamel. According to him, the Grand Alchemist used his stone to break the first limiter. However, after realizing that the grievances in the stone were affecting his magical power, he did not want to use this method for his wife. So, he studied another method to accomplish this task, which was actually a way for wizards to break the limiter through natural practice and hard work. A method he taught to a young Dumbledore after the latter graduated from Hogwarts and met Nicholas Flamel and became friends. Oddly enough, his method worked for his wife, but did not allow him to break through the second limiter. Edward then summarized his findings in this matter to research it later, but then decided to just ask Death about it. However, knowing how the latter operate, he knew that without a proper reason or benefit, Death would never give him such knowledge for free. So, he has to find a way to entice him. Scene break. Edward was floating in the air, invisible to everyone present, while a group of wizards listened to a man in the center giving a grand and motivational speech. This person was of course Gellert Grindelwald. Edward watched how the events of the second Fantastic Beasts movie unfolded without intervening. After Nicolas Flamel used a counter-charm along with other gifted wizards to save the city of Paris from the Protego Diabolica curse. After that, he took out an alchemy item and used it to activate the power of the Gate of World to return to the small dimension inside. After that, he returned to 1992. As soon as Edward walked out of the gate, he felt the power of time enveloping him and rapidly aging him by 66 years. However, before that power had the chance to act, the ring that Edward made before traveling through time released a temporal aura that protected him from the effect. After a few seconds of constantly fighting this aging curse, Edward left his laboratory on the moon to start his grand plan. Scene break. An old man was standing in front of the garden watering his plants. Suddenly, some new memories that he did not have before appeared in his mind. I met Edward in 1926. Before he was even born. Is this rascal messing with time now? Muttered the old man. Soon after, an old woman slowly walked next to him before saying, Newt, did you just have a random memory of Edward in 1926? Newt just nodded to his wife Tina. So, what do we do? Just ignore it. Edward knows what he's doing, and it has nothing to do with us, replied the old man calmly. Then, the two of them continued their slow-paced life. Meanwhile, a few people like Queenie and Grindelwald also received similar memories. Aberforth received a memory as well, however, he did not know Edward's identity as he covered his face during their encounter. As for the no-mage Jacob Kowalski, he died of old age more than a decade ago. Leaving his wife, Queenie, a widow. Scene break. After spending a few days going around the world, Edward was having dinner with his aunt, Amelia. You rarely take the initiative to have dinner with me, so what's going on? Asked Amelia calmly with a stern look on her face. Why do I appear so terrible in your mind? Replied Edward. However, all he received was a glaring stare. So, he went straight to the point of this meeting. I've had a recent change in perspective recently, thus changing many of my plans. I have decided to conquer the entire world and take control of the advancement of civilization on this planet. Amelia frowned after hearing this, not because Edward's words sounded ridiculous, but because she was surprised by the sudden change. The truth of the matter, Amelia is one of the closest people to Edward, even surpassing his parents at this point in time. When he was young, due to the fact that his parents were morally righteous people, she used to be one of the few people that he would talk about his dream of making the wizarding world into a very advanced civilization. And Amelia never treated her nephew as a kid talking nonsense, as she knew how talented and forward-thinking he was. Unfortunately, after his parents' death, Edward stopped talking about his plans and developed some sort of deep hidden disgust at the wizarding world. As a matter of fact, he entered a deep state of depression after that, and it was Amelia who got him through it. It was even her who gave him the idea of using magic to find a way to revive them. Thus, when Edward told her that he was moving forward with his plans again, she was indeed quite surprised. After taking a moment to ponder about his words, she asked, "What do you need me to do?" Title: Laying the Foundation. Chapter 67. Laying the Foundation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If you are interested in reading 10 chapters ahead, go check out my Patreon with the link https://www.patreon.com/lazysagedao, or just type in my writer's name in the website. The plot is getting exciting there, and you guys can support me in any way you can. Additionally, go read my other novel, Journey of the Fate-Destroying Emperor, and join the Discord. https://discord.gg/pnsstpy__________________________________________________________________________________h I would like to warn you in advance that you will probably be the ruler of this planet as I do not wish to deal with these political nonsenses. As long as my goals and requirements are met, I will not interfere. Unless absolutely necessary. Amelia gave him another deep stare before saying. So, you want me to do all the work while you enjoy all the benefits? Don't make it sound so bad. I will be more focused on advancing magic and technology, so my role is way more important in this situation as I will be the guiding light for the development of Earth's civilization. Why do I feel like your level of narcissism has dramatically increased in the past few weeks I have not seen you? Asked Amelia. Now that I look closely at you, you appear to be more handsome than I remember, and taller. If Edward was not sitting down, she would have already noticed the more than 10 centimeters increase in height. One of my magical experiments was successful, hence the slight change in appearance, but this is not the time to talk about this. If you want, I will tell you all about it later. Back to the topic, if you are going to be the true ruler of this planet, there is certain knowledge. Especially from the Muggle side that you need to know. After saying that, Edward waved his hand and a small mountain of books appeared somewhere in the room. After looking at these books, Amelia said with a slight irritation in her voice. I should remind you that most of our Bones family. Besides you were Hufflepuffs. So, what makes you think I will take my time to read all these books? Even if I did, how long would that take? Although these books are the most basics that you need to learn, do not be discouraged as I will give you plenty of help. He then took out a beautiful crown or diadem. Is that? Asked Amelia in wonder. Yes, Ravenclaw's diadem, said to have the ability to increase the wearer's intelligence. I personally made this one for you to increase your study ability and management ability. Noel.n. Nevertheless, you will not be alone. I have created a think tank with some of the most intelligent Muggles from different fields on this planet. Their sole purpose is to plan out the fastest way to conquer this planet and the best way to govern it. They will be both your teacher and advisors. Amelia nodded as she could imagine the shady things his nephew did to get all these people in one place. What about your parents? What are you going to do with them? After a brief silence, Edward responded. You know better than I do. With the way their values are, they would never accept some of the things that I am going to do. Although they would still support me, they would not like it. So, I am going to revive them only after everything is done. By then, it would be too late for them to try to convince me otherwise. And if they want any form of status or power in this new world that I am going to create, I will be more than happy to give it to them. However, based on their personality, I imagine that they will just enjoy a relaxing life after being revived. Amelia nodded her head in agreement with him. So, what is the first step of your plan? I am guessing it is to take control of the Ministry of Magic. You are correct, replied Edward, then he took out a glowing tube, a green stone, and a contract. This is the Philosopher's Stone and this is a potion that can increase a person's lifespan made from the stone. I will supply enough of it for you to draw in people, and further strengthen the loyalty of the ones that already follow the Bones family. Amelia's eyes shined. So, you finally succeeded. I thought you said that the stone was red. This one is very special as I added the youth potion to it. Thus, not only can it grant immortality, but also eternal youth. Amelia nodded calmly despite the excitement in her eyes, then she continuing to ask. Did you dilute it? Of course. This one can only increase 5 years of lifespan, and appear 1 year younger. Enough for people to feel the effect and want more. That's fine. I'm guessing this paper is a contract that forces people to be loyal to us. However, you should be aware that using force is not always the wisest method. I know that, replied Edward. Human beings are inherently rebellious. Force them to do something, they will fight back. However, convince them to do something willingly, then they will not hesitate to sacrifice their lives. This contract only allows you to discern who is truly loyal to you and who is just pretending. That way, you can easily determine who to trust after the people sign it. Amelia nodded, then the two of them discussed the next step of actions. In that case, we will begin a week later, said Edward, before leaving the mansion and operating somewhere else. Scene break. A burst of flame appeared in a dark and creepy fortress, and from the flame, Edward walked out leisurely without being harmed in any shape or form. Then, he slowly walked in a certain direction. As he went further into the fortress, an eerily cold that seeped deep into his soul could be felt, and soon, the reason for this phenomena was discovered. Dementors. Hundreds if not thousands of them. After feeling the exuberant emotions from Edward, they all rushed to meet the uninvited guest who dared to trespass into Azkaban. Many of them were excited at the prospect of finally having a proper meal. After sucking most of these prisoners dry, these Dementors were not happy with their daily meal, so they were very excited at the prospect of sucking the soul of this new prey. As for Edward, despite being surrounded by so many Dementors, that had a calm look in his face. He took out his wand and waved it. A Patronus charm did not come from his wand, but a dark light that enveloped all these Dementors. Following which, all of them aligned themselves in two separated rows while leaving the middle road empty. They looked like well-trained soldiers at a military parade, and Edward looked like their army commander. Although Edward admitted that Dementors were indeed truly foul creatures, he did spend a lot of time studying in order to understand the soul. His research came to new heights when he discovered manuals and books written by both Wraxidian and Acrisides. These two were some of the most dangerous dark wizards that ever lived, and some of the research that they conducted made Voldemort's Horcrux like child's play. Acrisides used to live here in Azkaban, and this place was his magical experiment laboratory. He is in fact the creator of Dementors. After discovering his inheritance, Edward realized that many of the dark things he did were actually quite cute, especially when he saw how Dementors were created. As for Wraxidian, he created a way to control Dementors like they were his slaves. Oddly enough, both these ancient wizards were very narcissistic and wanted their knowledge to be passed on to later generations, so they created maps to guide people to find the place they left their research. However, these guys were still twisted dark wizards. The place that they left their knowledge was full of terrible traps and enchantments. While going through these traps, Edward saw the bones of so many people. He even wondered how many maps did these people leave behind, and whether this was just a twisted game for them to kill wizards of future generations. Luckily for him, these guys did leave much of their dark arts research and even used magic to preserve them for a very long time. After controlling the Dementors, Edward headed straight for a particular cell. He looked down at the crazy and disheveled prisoners on the floor, then said, "Bellatrix Lestrange. The first chapter for the new fanfic is up, so you guys should go check it out, and tell me how you feel down on the comment section." Title: Right Hand Man. Chapter 68. Right Hand Man. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If you are interested in reading 10 chapters ahead, go check out my Patreon with the link https://www.patreon.com/lazysagedao, or just type in my writer's name in the website. The plot is getting exciting there, and you guys can support me in any way you can. Additionally, go read my other novel, Journey of the Fate-Destroying Emperor, and the Naruto fanfic, and join the Discord. https://discord.gg/princesstypy___________________________________________________________________________________a deranged smile appeared in her mouth before saying, A deranged smile appeared in her mouth before saying, "Are you sent by the Dark Lord?" "No," replied Edward. "Tisk, in that case, I do not need to care about you." After that, she muttered ever softly to herself. "Only the Dark Lord has the right to be this handsome. When he comes back, I will gladly torture this pretty boy and enjoy making many cuts in his face. Of course Edward heard her as she was not as quiet as she believed. However, he did not care about her words. What he cared about was her mind. After taking a tour there through Legilimency, he truly understood what the term, crazy, meant. Bellatrix's mind was full of thought of killing, torture, and an unnatural devotion to Voldemort. With a frown on his face, he walked inside her cell, pointed his wand at her before saying, Resurro Codex Vita. Instantly, he started analyzing Bellatrix's life code. After deciphering the ancient runes that made up her bloodline and soul, he realized that there was an actual reason for her madness. After countless years of inbreeding, the Black family bloodline has become broken beyond repair, even affecting the soul. The mind is the link of the soul to the body. By affecting the soul, the mind is also affected. No wonder whether it was Sirius or her aunt Walburga, they all possessed a fierce and dangerous temper. In her case, the madness reached beyond imaginable. As for Bellatrix, she was looking at him with the look of an animal wanting to pounce on its prey. Unfortunately, she discovered that she was incapable of moving, so her plans of trying to bite off Edward's hand to take his wand proved useless. After analyzing Bellatrix's life code for a while, Edward muttered to himself. I can deal with her bloodline problem later, the problem now is how to make her loyal to me. Her affection and loyalty for Voldemort has been so deeply imprinted in her mind that it even affected her soul. After pondering for a brief moment, Edward used a Kama charm on Bellatrix, then, with a wave of his wand, a transparent figure looking exactly like her appeared from her body. It was her soul. Then, Edward started to modify her memories, weaving a complex and intriguing tale. According to Bellatrix's new memory, once she was young, she accidentally received a prophecy. In this prophecy, she saw a vague figure standing in a floating city with countless figures standing behind him. This figure fought countless unimaginable beings, countless demons and gods, and was victorious. Among the people behind this vague figure was her who was standing right next to him. And many other families in the wizarding world. After receiving that prophecy, she searched and waited for that person until she met Voldemort. With his unmatched power, Bellatrix believed that he was the hidden figure in the prophecy, so she became loyal to him, she devoted her body, soul, and entire being to him. Then, when Voldemort died and she went to torture the Longbottoms for information, she, accidentally, learned that Voldemort was actually a half-blood. She became devastated and outraged because the only thing she knew for sure about the hidden figure was that he was a pure blood. Knowing that she served the wrong person, she decided to punish herself by spending years in Azkaban. She was also waiting for that hidden figure to show up. Since she was by his side when he fought the gods, then they will eventually meet. Nevertheless, she did not want anyone else to notice the change in her behavior, so she displayed loyalty to Voldemort to the outside. Of course none of these things actually happened, and Edward was just using Bellatrix's obsession with both pure blood ideologies and Voldemort to guide her to be obsessive and undyingly loyal to him. As a matter of fact, there was an easier way for him to get her loyalty. He could forcibly rewrite her own will. During his travels, while in the southern part of Haiti, he learned from a Haitian dark wizards how to refine zombies. This dark magic was similar to Inferius, except for the fact Inferi are created from the body of the dead, while zombies are created from living people. If Edward wanted, he could modify the zombie transformation and make into an obedient slave that follows all his orders. The problem with that is the fact that people with no will of their own have no creative ability, just blindly follow orders. That is not what he needed Bellatrix for. So, in order to get her loyalty willingly, without affecting her thinking ability, he went to so much trouble. Of course, this was not enough to reassure him. After finishing modifying her memories directly through her soul so that these memories would never actually be discovered as false, Edward placed her soul back into her body. Then, he pointed his wand at the dark mark on her forearm. A white light came from his wand and entered the mark. Following which, the dark mark changed from its previous design to an Ouroboros with a pyramid inside. Inside the pyramid was a lotus with a single eye at the center. The Ouroboros represents infinity, the pyramid stands for rebirth after death, the lotus symbolizes wisdom and the eye stands for truth and knowledge. The whole design is a representation of Edward's limitless pursuit of knowledge through intelligence and wisdom after he was granted a second chance at life. After the new mark was replaced from Bellatrix's hand, it started to move around in her skin before disappearing. Afterwards, it appeared deep in her soul. This is the back hand that Edward left on her in case someone powerful enough to remedy her soul again and erased the memories he so cautiously planted. Edward was never arrogant, believing that his plans were infallible. As a person who will one day travel across countless universes and dimensions, he can imagine the kind of powerful being he will encounter. There is no doubt in his mind that many of these people have that ability. So, he placed a back-hand on Bellatrix in case such a day arrived. Then, he can still forcefully control her through that method, or instantly kill her in case she betrays him or someone tries to get information about him from her soul. Few minutes later, Bellatrix opened her eyes with a look of confusion on her face. However, after seeing Edward's face, the hidden figure that she could never see clearly suddenly became very vivid to her. She instantly got up from the floor, before saying, "Lord, I finally found you, after so many years, you finally came to see me." After that, she looked at her ragged appearance with a frown, then she knelt on the ground. "I'm sorry that I am not presentable in front of you, my lord." Edward looked at her actions, then nodded in satisfaction after reading her mind. "Get up." Bellatrix followed the instruction. "Open your mouth," said Edward, and she did not hesitate. With a wave of his wand, her teeth turned white and clean. With another wave, she was cleaned up and wearing proper clothes. Bellatrix could even smell a lavender scent coming from her body. "You are now more presentable," said Edward. He placed his wand inside a small pouch that was hanging inside his coat. Accio Daniela. And, the Accio charm cannot summon people, but this one was modified by Edward to be able to do so. A woman that looked exactly like Bellatrix was taken out from the pouch, however, she had a dull look in her eyes as if unresponsive to any external stimuli. Edward had used the Philosopher's Stone to permanently change her appearance in order for her to take Bellatrix's place in Azkaban. After placing Daniela in the cell, Edward handed his arm to Bellatrix, then with a burning flame, he disappeared from Azkaban. In this short visit, he acquired an army of Dementors that only followed his orders, and right-hand women that can do all the dirty things or experiment that his fleeting morality will not allow him to do. Well, I understand that this plot of this chapter is a little too convoluted, but I do not know any better way to do so without totally changing Bellatrix's personality. I could not just write that she was impressed by Edward's talent, then decided to devote herself to him. Or he just used Imperieus' curse. So, bear with it for now. The second chapter for the Naruto fanfic is coming tonight, at a very late hour. Maybe. Title: Devilish Side. Chapter 69. Devilish Side. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If you are interested in reading 10 chapters ahead, go check out my Patreon with the link https://www.patreon.com/lazysagedao, or just type in my writer's name in the website. The plot is getting exciting there and you guys can support me in any way you can. Additionally, go read my other novel, Journey of the Fate-Destroying Emperor, and join the Discord. https://forward/forward/discord___________________________________________. After leaving Azkaban, Edward teleported himself and Bellatrix to his laboratory on the moon using the World Gate's power. Of course she did not know the exact location, but just found herself inside a very large space with many differently labeled rooms. Edward had her waiting for him in the lounge for a few hours before meeting her again. Then, he handed a necklace to her. Immediately after wearing it, Bellatrix found her mind completely calm and indifferent, extremely logical. The majority of her aggression and sadistic nature turned into an extremely logical one. This necklace was enchanted with a version of the mechanized mind spell specifically designed to rein in her madness. "I need you to learn the mechanized mind spell as the necklace is only temporary," said Edward. "My lord, no problem. I will learn this charm as soon as possible so that I can help you lead the Pure Blood family to glory and greatness." However, Edward shook his head. "I need you to get these nonsense Pure Blood theories out of your head as soon as possible. In the new world order that I am about to create, there will be only two types of people: useful and useless. Muggles are classified as useful one. In some cases, they might be ever more important than wizards. As for you, do you know why I chose you?" Bellatrix frowned as she realized that the new lord that she was serving was different from that damn Voldemort who tricked her. He seemed to be more ambitious and did not care about people's origin. Although these ideas contradict with what she believed all her entire life, Bellatrix was willing to try to change in order to better serve her new master. "I do not know, my lord," she replied. "The reason is because I need someone to do the dirty work that my already gray morality will not allow me to do. So, I do not need your Pure Blood nonsense to get in the way of plans. As for your madness and craziness, it is one of the reasons that I chose you, but you have to keep a certain level of control of it. What I need is a mad dog that bite at my command, not one that bites everything and everyone without any sense of control." Bellatrix took a moment to process the information she received, then with a twinkle in her eyes. "No worry, my lord, I will be your most loyal and ferocious dog." "Good," replied Edward. "Now, here is your first task after learning the mechanized mind charm. I need you to create artificial obscurials for me." "Obscurial?" asked Bellatrix as she tried to remember the meaning of this term. After trying to remember for a while without any success, she said with trembling voice. "My lord, I do not know what obscurials are, please punish me for my incompetence." Edward frowned before answering. "I am not Voldemort, and I will not punish you for your ignorance." After that, Edward took a few minutes to explain what an obscurus was. "My lord, how would we create such a thing artificially?" "Simple," responded Edward. "I need you to capture a bunch of children with magical abilities between the ages 6.8 years old, then divide them into two groups. For the first group, you will adopt the persona of a mother figure to them. However, you will punish them every time that they use their magical powers, creating both physical and emotional trauma to them. By doing this, you will force them to start repressing their magical abilities, leading to obscurus forming from these children. Of course, in order to make sure that these children are often reprimanded for using their magic, you have to secretly create opportunities for them where they are forced to use their magic abilities. Then, you will accidentally catch them and punish them for their actions. As for the second group, you will modify their memories and instill years of abuse into their mind due to their magical abilities. I want to see if an obscurial will be born that way and which process is quicker." "My lord, can I torture the children in the first group?" asked Bellatrix with a strange excitement in her voice. After frowning, Edward answered. "Although it could help to speed up the process, I will have to disagree." "As you wish," replied Bellatrix. Although Edward did not read her mind, he could tell that she was going to do so. "After all, isn't that the reason that I chose her? To do the things that I am not willing to do," thought Edward to himself. Then he secretly sighed, but he did not mention the subject again. "Do you have any questions?" asked Edward. After hesitating for a moment, Bellatrix replied. "My lord, I do not have the ability to use a complex charm like weaving false memories into someone else's mind. You do not need to worry about that, as I have many alchemy products to help you in your research. Additionally, you can learn," replied Edward. Then, he said out loud. "Siri, grant her temporary level 3 access to the library. Additionally, on my authority, grant her a diadem for the duration of her study. After Edward said these words, Bellatrix suddenly heard a voice speaking around her. She looked around, but could not find the origin of the voice. Granting Bellatrix Lestrange temporary level 3 authority. Processing. Access granted. Immediately after that, Bellatrix found a map inside her mind, and the map indicated what room she could enter with her permission and what resources were available to her based on her authority level. Although she did not understand many of these things, she marveled at all the rooms she had access to, and was flabbergasted by the amount of room she was forbidden to enter due to her low-level access. Then, a look of yearning appeared on her face. As for Edward, he looked at Bellatrix, who was acting like a country bump who had seen a modern city for the first time, then he frowned. Ciri, before she starts her magical study, used the temporal advantage of the Mind Palace spell to cram as much knowledge about modern Muggle society and scientists in her mind. As you command, sir. Edward then nodded in satisfaction. With this method, Bellatrix can study and understand basic modern knowledge. Mostly basic scientific knowledge. In a very short time, thus becoming a proper researcher that can help him. Of course, as a result of this, Bellatrix will spend the next month with headaches so intense and painful that it would drive any ordinary person mad. With the help of potions, the side effects will be eased, but the process will still be brutal. Nevertheless, Edward still has faith in her that she can take it. Especially knowing that she was doing it to be more helpful to him. After settling Bellatrix, Edward proceeded to prepare for his next step. A step that will forever change the magical world. Title. Sensational announcement. Chapter 70. Retcon announced. Please read. You are listening at novelfull.audio. So, I have received a lot of backslash for the obscurial plot, and I feel like I should explain. First, in my opinion, although this story is very fun to write, the main character, Edward, is very shallow with little to no character development. My plan in writing that plot was for him to eventually regret his decision and carry the weight of said regret for the rest of his life. That his pursuit of knowledge can lead him astray, that he was a hypocrite for criticizing others while doing this terrible thing. In general, it was to give him some character development. Second, I would have written later in the story that the Obscurus was probably the only magic that could hurt death, and Edward was planning to use it as a contingency plan against it. It was supposed to have the power to even destroy law. Finally, these kids were not supposed to die. As mentioned before, he learned how to separate Obscurus from a child's body from Newt in 1926. Additionally, my plan was for him to erase the knowledge of the abuse from their minds after the experiment, find them a proper family and support them to live lavish lives. This was a way to relieve all his guilt. Later on, his team that would travel across dimension with him would discover this secret, thus creating tension and drama with the clash of different morality. Now, many people have pointed out to me that I have gone too far, and after reading these comments, I agree with them. So, I'm retconning the last chapter. P.S. There will be no chapter released today.